All right, hello everyone. I see some people funneling in. We'll just wait a few minutes or so before we get started. Hello everyone. Just waiting a few minutes to get started as people start funneling in. All right, I'll just start with a short introduction. Thank you all for attending today's webinar, Become an Alteryx Wizard, Discover the Time-Saving Magic of Analytic Apps, presented by Jacob Kahn. I'm your host, Katie, and I'm with Tessellation and Data Coach. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started in today's presentation. If you happen to have any questions, please just type them into the Q&A module, and I will go through and have Jacob answer any of them during the presentation. Just make sure you keep the chat fun, be respectful. If you have any questions for Jacob, again, it's better to use the Q&A function rather than the chat. And as always, just make sure that you're being respectful of one another and you have fun. And then also before we get started, we just wanted a quick message from our sponsors. Tessellation is a modern analytics consultancy. We enable and manage organizations' analytics and self-service teams by educating people, optimizing technology, developing world-class products, and providing sustainable results. And Data Coach, where most analytics training programs lack depth, Data Coach provides wisdom. Our modern curriculum is unparalleled, comprising video lessons, hands-on exercises, and a capstone project designed around your company's data. Data Coach offers a truly premium service, one-on-one coaching. And now I would love to introduce our speaker of the day, Jacob Kahn. Jacob is currently a consultant at Tessellation, where he drives the development of data processing and automation solutions. He has a wealth of knowledge in tax and audit consulting and brings a strong dexterity in Alteryx to the table. While working at one of the world's largest public account firms, Jacob found himself fascinated with improving workflows, optimizing automations, and mastering Alteryx. His natural gift for building intuitive yet innovative workflows led him to win the 2020 Alteryx Excellence Award. As an active contributor to the Alteryx community, Jacob is an Alteryx certified partner and proudly leads the New York City Alteryx user group. To follow his data analytics journey, you can connect with him on Twitter and follow him on LinkedIn. So without further ado, the floor is all yours, Jacob.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. Okay, so thanks to everyone who's attended. I know that it's the middle of the day and lunchtime or breakfast, depending where you are. So we're going to go ahead and get started immediately speaking about analytical applications in Alteryx. As Katie mentioned, please feel free to use the chat function with each other. And I have both the chat and the QA opened on my end. But Katie will stop me at any point for any questions that I have not noticed. Today, we're talking about analytical applications, which is a feature in Alteryx that many folks who are familiar with Alteryx do not use, or they don't use enough. But one of my favorite things about Alteryx is its ability to create applications that don't require you as the user or developer to open Alteryx if you're interested in running or utilizing your workflow or what we're going to call applications. However, I think there might be a few of you out there who might not have tapped into Alteryx yet. So we're going to do a quick intro to Alteryx. So what is Alteryx? And this is going to be really quick because I'm assuming the majority of people have touched Alteryx. If you haven't, though, Alteryx is analytics for everyone. So no matter what you're doing in the day-to-day, no matter what department you're working on, no matter what function you perform, Alteryx gives you the ability to perform any type of data analytics on any type of work that you're doing. As well, it allows you to kind of automate all those analytic processes. So if you're someone who creates a million Excel workbooks and you're in Excel pretty much every single day, Alteryx might be for you. As well, one of my favorite features of Alteryx is that it's no code. So for anyone who doesn't know the difference between XML, JSON, HTML, Python, R, and I'm trying to think C++, like myself, Alteryx might be your go-to tool. As well, you don't have to necessarily hire, if you're a department lead, somebody with all these different experiences in these different languages, if you can get Alteryx into one of your employees or staff members' hands. Alteryx is just right for that. So with that, I'm going to go into a quick little demonstration of what I just talked about in Alteryx. Then we're going to go and dive right into analytical applications. The hope for today is to build out at least one, if not two, workflows into applications. So I'm going to go quickly through the use case, show you the workflow, and then convert them to analytical applications. We'll go step by step. Lastly, what we'll do is we'll try to customize our applications, best way to edit our applications, and maybe even talk about deployment and the auditing part of our applications. Now, if I'm going to try to go as granular as possible. However, if I'm not granular enough, just message me in the chat and I will do my best to expand on any points. Okay. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly just switch my screens to Alteryx. Again, I'm sure most of you have seen it, but if you haven't, Alteryx is this tool that allows you to drag and drop other tools in order to transform and perform any type of analytic process on a set of data. So I have a set of data on my loaded into my Alteryx already. You can see you could see a view of that, an example of that data on the left, and now you can see that data down below. And let's say I wanted to go ahead and create a new field. All I might have to do is drag and drop a tool, add a column, name my column. So I'll just call it test for presentation, and I'll just include the value test. So just like that, I'm able to perform an analytic process right on my data, and it's just drag and drop. Alteryx also allows you to take any type of consideration to your data. So we see that some of my data is not okay. Again, I understand as an Alteryx user, I can drag and drop another tool onto my canvas, onto my data, and I can actually go ahead and perform any type of process, such as in this case, a trim function that I might do in Excel, right onto my data set within Alteryx. So that's a really quick back-end introduction to what Alteryx is. If there are no questions to the baseline of Alteryx and where we're starting today, I'm going to go ahead and continue down our agenda. Okay, so like I said, drag and drop functionality. So one of the things we're going to do today actually is work on a Yahoo Finance calculator. So here we have a workflow. As you can see, we have all those drag and drop tools on our workflow. Now, this workflow starts with a link coming from the web, which is basically basically just a Yahoo Finance link that allows me to query data, so pull data from Yahoo Finance and output it to my computer. Why might I want this function? So if I was, let's say, the manager of an investments department, and I instructed my staff every single day that they have to go and get the open close for the past 7 days and pull that data down from the web. Well, I don't necessarily know how my staff is doing that. Perhaps they go onto Yahoo Finance and they copy and paste data straight from a table into Excel. Oh, but maybe they move their data into the wrong cells. Perhaps they're going to go to another website, which I, as the manager, haven't approved to pull these open and close prices, and they've copied and pasted that data from that. However, as the manager, what I'd like to do is make sure that all my staff is going to be using the exact same source to pull the open and close prices of any specific stock symbol within a day. And that's why I'm going to build this into an application. It's a process that I, the manager, will lock in. Nobody else can touch it. The only thing they can do is use the process. So as I mentioned, we have a link going to finance.yahoo.com. And again, I'm that manager who says, I don't want my staff using any other source for stock symbols, open and close prices. I want it to be just from Yahoo Finance. I'm going to point out a few things. If you look at the name of my workflow, we see that it's yxmd.yxmd. That means my file type that I'm dealing with right now is a generic standard workflow. right? So if I were to click in for all those Alteryx users, which I'm assuming you have that Alteryx background, if I click anywhere on the canvas and go to my workflow configuration window and I click on the workflow tab, I would see that I'm actually building a standard workflow. Okay, I quickly know that I want to make this into an application. I approve the process. I understand that I have a start date, end date. I understand that I'm using a download tool. I understand that I'm parsing out data that, and at the end of the day, I'm making my data, shoot out like this. I got a date, I got an open, I got a high, I got a low, I got a close, I got an adjusted close, and I got the volume for that specific date. Okay, so this is the workflow, this is the process, this is what I want my staff to do every single day. Point out one more thing. If we look into the query that I'm initially using, so the query to download data, this is my input. Instead of using an input data tool, I'm using a link and a download tool to input some type of information. You see that you can just copy and paste this link into your Google Chrome. So we can go ahead and do that together. And you might be surprised at what price I'm checking out. So I'm going to go ahead and paste this in. Oh, actually it downloaded it, excuse me. Yeah, so as you see, it will actually, so this link is actually the download button. That's why it's not going to open up here. But as you see, if I do it one more time, I'm going to paste it in and hit enter. It's going to download the file, the export that I'm extracting from Yahoo Finance. And as you note, it's Tesla. I can go ahead though and change the actual stock symbol I'm trying to download. So let's say I wanted to do AYX. I can go ahead and get the Alteryx prices just like that. So that's how I've pretty much built out this workflow. And again, the point here is that I now want to convert it into an application so that my users will not go ahead and use any other type of source. I'm going to build this application. I'm going to share it to all of my users. I'm going to maybe put it in a SharePoint site. I'm going to put it on a OneDrive. And I'm going to say anyone who's using like on my team who's going to pull some type of stock prices, go to that location, use my application. There's no more work on your end. We're actually going to go get to another example soon that actually shows you the process of an entire workbook process just using an application. And we haven't even yet seen what the application might look like. So we have our standard workflow. We're going to go ahead and introduce ourselves to the interface tool palette. Okay, the interface tool palette is generally used when Alteryx designers are developing Alteryx macros or Alteryx analytical applications. These allow you to create this configuration window we see when we build a tool within our macro, so that if I built a macro in Alteryx and dragged it onto my canvas, I'd be able to see the configuration window of that macro right here in my configuration window, utilizing these tools. So the minute I drop on one of these tools, so let's go ahead and say I want to drop on a file browse tool, right? I'm going to drop that. Remember, drag, drop onto my canvas. Note a few things. Number one, if I click anywhere on my workflow and I navigate all the way back to my workflow tab in the workflow configuration window, you'd see that automatically my workflow has converted into an analytic app. I can't even go ahead and click on standard workflow because I have one of these interface tools on my canvas. If I went ahead and deleted that tool and I click anywhere on my workflow to see the workflow configuration window, I now can click standard workflow. Last but not least, when I go ahead and click Analytic App, and we're just going to go ahead and actually hide this. Note that when it's a standard workflow, I just get the schedule button. I get to see all the tabs I have open, and I get my run button. The minute I go ahead and click Analytic App, I get our magic wand. Hence today's title of today's session, Become a Wizard with Analytical Applications. So this is going to be how we're going to eventually access our application. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to actually convert this into an application. I'm going to show you all how to add your interface tools. I'm going to show you the final product. We're going to customize that final product, and then we're going to see if it works. Okay, just to switch back to the presentation one more time, there are a few things I'd like to reiterate about why we're using analytical applications. Number one, we want to repeat our processes. We want to enhance our consistency, and we want to eliminate errors. So if I'm that manager and I have a specific process that I want my staff to do, I don't need them opening Alteryx and making any type of adjustment. I just need them to click the run button, maybe take a file that they download from a a website or something like that, throw it up there. So maybe they need to change a few things, like they need to update the date of when their workflow is being ran. Maybe they need to update, maybe we want to include who's actually running the workflow. So we want them to type their name in so that this way our report output actually gives us some type of information of who ran the report, a bunch of things. But all I can tell you is that number one, that process has to be repeatable. Last but not least, it's also great for that auditor because the auditor will know that every report they're seeing and that they're auditing is coming from one single process that they just have to review. Number two, a great reason to use analytical applications is deployment. I might be a business and I've been able to juice out of my manager one Alteryx license, but we also have an Alteryx gallery. Well, I can convert all my workflows into applications and then upload them to my Alteryx gallery, upload them to my Alteryx server, and anyone who's in my organization can go ahead and utilize my workflow without having to actually have an Alteryx designer license on their machine or connected to their email address. So deployment of workflows is amazing in a large organization. I have an endless amount of clients that I deal with who utilize the Alteryx designer to upload workflows and improve processes, and then deploy them to all of their employees via the Alteryx designer. So again, they might get a budget to purchase 250 Alteryx licenses. They're a firm of 10,000 people and they have one Alteryx workflow that's going to be used by 2,000 of those employees. Well, they just have to throw it up on the server and deploy it to those users. Last but not least is owning the process. I come from public accounting and I can say that I can only say that there were so many different contracts my firm had with other companies that produced a certain type of software or calculator that we were using in order to make a specific calculation. For example, I worked in international tax and we had a specific number that we were going to throw onto an international tax form. Well, we would actually pay another company to upload data and then shoot us back the number because of the complexity of the calculation. Well, what if I, as the CPA, understand what that calculation is? I want to now throw it out to all of my staff and I want them to use that. Instead of spending that $250,000 on that specific third-party software, I, as a user, now own that process. There needs to be an update. I don't have to go through IT and make a phone call and wait hours to get my answer. I, as a developer, having the developer on my team, can just reach out to them and make any adjustment. So it really allows you to own the actual work you're doing. No more third-party subscriptions. So do we have any questions yet? Okay, Chris,
Yes,
it's great to see you. Yeah. Sorry, Katie. Yeah, read it out.
Okay. Yes, so Chris asked, is the main difference between a macro and an analytical app the interface components?
Okay, awesome. So I'm going to answer that live. Let's click that button. Okay, so I'm going to say like this. Basically, you're going to use these interface tools for both your analytical applications and your macros. There are two main differences that you're going to experience when you use an analytical application or a macro. Let's quickly go over them. When I go ahead and click on macro, I still get that wand. Oh, I lose that wand. And if I went ahead and saved my workflow, you'd note that my workflow is a YXMC, not a YXMD. If I went ahead and clicked on Analytic App, I went ahead and clicked File, Save As, you see that now I have a YXWZ, a YX Wizard, because we're dealing with that whole wand magic kind of situation going on using analytical applications. So that's difference number one. I'm actually saving a different type of file. As well, difference number two will come later in today's conversation. But when I build a macro, I can go ahead and include a macro in another workflow. However, when I open an analytical application, it is going to open in a completely separate window. So to answer that question one more time, there are two differences that you're going to see mainly, but you're going to be using the exact same interface tools to also accomplish the exact same thing. Okay. Chris, do you feel good about that? You could throw that in the chat maybe, or ask another question if that was not suffice. I would like to show you one more example, but I don't have one ready for you right now. So we're going to stick to our guns and what we've been working on. Okay. Sorry, my computer's all stuck. Okay, awesome. So like I said, we've already converted our standard workflow to an analytic app. We have our interface tool palettes up here. And I've shown you that we actually have a link over here that's going to pull from yahoofinance.com. currently we're pulling the Tesla stock symbol, right? I can go ahead in here and change that to the Alteryx stock symbol, do a quick run on my computer and pull out the Alteryx data, right? As well, you can see here that my dates are from the date of January 4th all the way down to May 3rd. Well, what happens if I'm interested in pulling, let's say, January 4th to January 6th, only the last 3 days? I don't even know if there is going to be a January 6th. There is, because Monday, the 4th must have been a Monday. I don't remember what January was, but the stock market was closed, but prior to the 4th, which is why we don't get the 1, 2, and 3. But anyways, we're going to go straight into now throwing those interface tools on. So task number 1, we need the user to basically select which stock symbol they're looking to pull data from. Okay, so what's the best option for me here? Either I can have the user type in any stock symbol, or I can provide the user a list of stock symbols to pull. Okay, in this example, I'm actually going to go straight into typing in any type of stock symbol. So thinking about typing in, I'm looking at my interface tools. What do I want the user to have? I might suggest it's not a drop down because I already said I don't want to provide them a list of values. It's not going to be a file browse tool because they're not uploading a file. It's not going to be a numeric up and down tool because they need to enter some letters. So what I'd suggest is maybe let's use a text box tool. If I haven't used a text box tool before, you can click on it and open an example to see what the text box does. But if I quickly just hover over it, we'll see that it allows users to enter characters into a free form text box. So I'm going to go ahead and assume that that's the tool we need to use. I'm going to drag my tool right onto this little purple container and release it. I see Katie's back on. So let's see if Katie has a question.
Yeah, we had another question come in. They're asking, can we design a custom UI for apps? I have built a few apps, but the UI is not user-friendly when we have multiple interface components.
Awesome. So I'm assuming that question is coming in from someone who's deploying on the Alteryx gallery. Unfortunately, you cannot change the majority of the UI. Most of that will have to come into your consideration and agreements with your Alteryx contact and Alteryx representative who's sold you Alteryx Designer and help you install it onto your machines in your firm on-prem. So at the moment, you'll see today kind of the UI that we're going to create and the ability to create a different UI within actually Alteryx Designer itself. When you go ahead and throw these up onto the gallery, it will be different. So I'm sorry to disappoint, but let's see if you learn anything new today on the UI side of things. So I went ahead and I dragged and dropped the text box tool. And again, I told you that we have this magic wizard, this wand button popping up. And I know that my workflow is an Analytic app, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and click this. If you believe me, this window opened up on my other screen. You can tell that it just opened up from here because I can no longer select any other buttons on my Alteryx Designer. That's because this is a pop-up window. You see that it's asking me for text box 47. As well, it gives me the option to finish. Finish here is going to be like our run button. If I went into my Alteryx Designer, I'm going to go cancel, and I went into my tool and I replaced text box 47 because it's the 47th tool I brought onto my canvas with stock symbol. And I went ahead anywhere on the canvas. I'm going to just click save. Oh, now it's YXWC. So we're going to go ahead and save this to my desktop quickly. If I click my magic wand, you now see that my text box is asking for a stock symbol. Awesome. So I can go ahead and type, anything I'd like to type in this thing. Maybe I'm looking at the Tesla, maybe I'm looking at for Apple, maybe I'm looking for Alteryx, whatever it is. Maybe I'm looking for PLTR, some type of competitor, but we'll keep it blank for right now. So we figured out how to add a text box to our tool. Now, if this was a macro, we'd still use a text box, but we would not be using this magic wand functionality. We wouldn't be able to see our application as such. So now I understand that I have a place for my user to enter in a value. I can even go ahead and say, I want my user to automatically be pointed to the Alteryx stock symbol. So if I go ahead and type my default text and went into my application by clicking the magic wand, I would see that automatically AYX comes up as my stock symbol. Pretty cool. I'm gonna go ahead and cancel this. Well, now I already told you that we know where our symbol is located in our link. It's right here before the question mark. Now we need the user's value that they've typed into this text box to update the actual link we're using. We can also have the user's value update an input data tool. So let's say you have a new file to upload. We'll go through an example as such. So anything, we got to make sure that whatever the user is going to input is going to actually update our workflow for us. So the way we do that is these interface tools are a little different in that you notice that they're not horizontal connectors, they're vertical connectors. So I'm going to go ahead and take the output anchor, the Q output anchor, and drag it to the lightning bolt of my input data tool. And lo and behold, you'll note that a third tool will pop up between my process of what I'm trying to accomplish. This tool is called the action tool. You can find that action tool as well in the top left-hand corner of your interface tool palette. Now, what the action tool will do is the action tool is actually going to update a specific value in our tool with the user's entered configuration. So what I mean to say is we want to shoot that AYX, TSLA, PLTR. We want to shoot that value into our link. We're going to use the action tool to do that. So I can go ahead and the actual values of actions that we can actually select will differ between what interface tool and what actual Alteryx tool you're using. So in this instance, we get these are your generic 4, but oftentimes you won't be able to update cell. So your real 3 might be the update raw XML, updated value with formula. In this instance, because we're connected to a text input tool, we can actually go ahead and update a specific cell. But if we update a specific cell, we're going to replace this entire cell with just AYX. So we know that's not the case. So why don't we go ahead and select update value? We want to update a specific value within our tool. Generally, I don't really have any advice of where you know to click. I would say you just open these trees until you find what you're looking for. So I just opened the data tree, I opened R, and here I have my actual value that I want to update. And I know here that I have the value AYX. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my link. Last but not least, when I clicked on it, if I clicked anywhere again, you'll note that down here, I get an update in this little grayed out window. This grayed out window actually allows us, the Alteryx designers, to actually select the value that we want to replace in our string. So I'm going to actually select replace a specific string. I don't want to replace anything here except for AYX. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the first part of this query and going to remove the last parts. So all I'm going to be replacing in is AYX. Doesn't matter what the user inputs, as long as that is actually a stock symbol, we'll go ahead and we're going to replace the value AYX in our string that's included in our text input tool with the value that the user inputs via that text box tool. Again, as I mentioned, you can please go ahead and use the chat box if that needs to be expounded on a little further, or if that makes sense to you. Okay, so we've gone ahead and done that. So how can we confirm right now? I can go ahead, I'm going to click save quickly. I'm going to teach y'all a really quick, awesome trick. If I go ahead and move this tool on my canvas, like to the right a little bit, you see that I have a little asterisk right next to my actual file. Well, that means that I have some unsaved changes. So I'll just go ahead and click save, and you'll note that that asterisk is removed. I'll go ahead and move another tool. You see that there's an unsaved change. It's got to click save, and that asterisk will be removed. A lot of folks don't know that. Whenever I show people that, they're usually generally excited to say, like, I never actually knew what that was. Like, oh man, like what if Alteryx crashes? Well, make sure you don't have any asterisks on. I mean, they have backup anyways, but like just try to remove your asterisks as much as possible. Okay, so what do we want to do next? What I'd like to do next is actually go ahead and differentiate, kind of like isolate the date, the start date and the end date that the user is going to input to pull data from, to query data. So if we look at our query, we see that we have a period 1 and a period 2. That is a start date and an end date, right? So these are pretty cool. They're actually using what they call Unix time, which is how Yahoo Finance is going to actually differentiate the time. And there's this whole different like type of calculation that I'm including within the workflow to convert a date to the specific Unix time and period that Yahoo Finance is going to use. But that's not really important right here. What's important is I have a second text input that has the Unix date. So that's the first date of Unix data, just like we have in Excel. I have my start date, which is going to be January 1st, and I have my end date, which is going to be May 3rd. So if I went ahead and gone in here and just said, I want to pull from, let's say 6/18, today's not a holiday, and we're going to pull from 6/17. I ran this workflow, again, not in an application, we're running it as a standard workflow as such. I'll get my two records for January 16 and January 18. So I want to make sure I go ahead and have the user be able to change the start date and end date in the application. So let's look through our interface tool palette again. It's not going to be a tree, a text box, radio button, numeric, no, map. I don't even know when I'm going to use that. And some of these things I really have no idea how to use, but I know that date sounds pretty good. I'm going to allow the user to select the date. So I'm just going to drag and drop a date tool into my first box. Okay, awesome. Again, how do I connect these tools? A vertical connection. So I'm going to drag from the queue to the lightning bolt, and I'm going to expect an action tool to be brought on. And we can go into my date tool, and we see that it tells us it's date 49. It's the 49th tool we brought onto our canvas. I'm going to click the wizard. And if you note, we get date 49, and here is some type of interface for the user to click on. The user could actually work around this, right? So they can select a month. They can go ahead and they can select a year. They could just navigate. So let's say they wanted to know what was going on in January of 2016. You can navigate all the way back to 2016, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll just go ahead and, like I said, we're going to remove date 49 and we're going to start date, right? Oh, in one second, Katie, we'll take that next question. I included start date. And again, we have a specific value within this text input tool that I want to update. I want to update the first row in the first column. So that action tool allows me to update a cell. So I'm going to update the cell in row 1 and column 1, which is that 2021-06-17. That is the value I'm going to be replacing. So with that, we're going to take the next question.
Yeah, so someone typed in, this is super helpful. Will the recording and workflow be made available after this call? I can answer on the front for the recording. Yes. Since you registered, you'll get an email recording, and it'll also be up on the Tessellation and Data Coach websites. And then Jacob, if you wanted to answer the workflow aspect of this question.
Yeah, I was going to actually make this. So one of the awesome things about hosting these webinars is the connections we make with our attendees. So if you'd like to receive this calculator we're building out today, just for your reference, please find me on LinkedIn and message me, and I'll be more than happy to share the file with you. I just want to make sure that we take advantage of our connections we can make on this webinar, make new friends, share new ideas, and get to know each other. I'm really friendly, so please don't be shy and find me on LinkedIn, okay? Awesome. Okay, yeah, and I was hoping this was going to be helpful. It's kind of like a simple use case. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and click save because you see I have my Control S. I now lost my asterisk. Okay, so we have our start date. So now if I went ahead and clicked on my wizard, you'd see that now we get start date, stock symbol, start date. Okay, and now last but not least, we probably need an end date because I want my user to select what's that end date going to be. So why don't I just go ahead, and if you haven't seen this function in Alteryx before, you can literally just copy and paste any tool you have on your canvas. However, in this instance, we know we're not the start date, we're going to be updating the end date. Awesome. As well, I don't need to just drag and drop the queue to the lightning bolt. I can just go ahead and drag an action tool on, and I understand queue to queue, lightning bolt to lightning bolt. And what's awesome here is that in your general tools in Alteryx, unless you have that funky looking input node, input anchor, you can only bring in one connection. Well, when you're going vertically, you can bring in as many connections as you'd like. Think about that. If you have a formula tool that has like 15 formulas in it, and you want to have a user update, all those formulas. Maybe there's a specific value they want to enter. Maybe there's a specific field they're supposed to be making a certain calculation on. You can have so many actions come in from different tools into one specific formula tool to adjust all those formulas you need. Okay. And in this instance, if we look back at our text input tool, we saw that our end date is going to be the second column, the first row. So going to my action tool, I'm going to update the first row and the second column, value 2021-06-18. So we can go ahead and click save. I'm going to give this a quick run. And like I mentioned, we're looking at Alteryx 2021-06-17, 2021-06-18. Okay, now if I went to my application, let's make sure we got this right. I'm going to type in PLTR, okay? And I'd like to know PLTR from August 2nd to August 6th. I don't think there's any federal holidays during that time period. If I click finish, oh, there are no updates. I probably have the wrong stock symbol for pounds here. So let's try with AYX. I'm gonna go ahead and click finish. Oh, there were no outputs. So it looks like I might have made an error. Just to confirm one more time, we'll go ahead and let's look a little further back. So Tuesday to, let's say, 30th. If I click finish. Okay, I must have been, let's think about this for 1 second. I must have been making some type of error by looking too far ahead. Okay, so let's confirm that one more time. My start date will select as August 17th, and my end date we can do August 18th. Go ahead and click finish. And we have our 2 records. Awesome. Okay. Apologies for that error. Whenever you're doing a webinar and something goes wrong, you get extremely nervous that you made a mistake in your development. Okay, awesome. So I can go ahead and also select a few days back. So let's say I wanted to come from here. And I can get all the way back from August 2nd all the way till August 18th. Now, can we confirm this information? Well, why don't we go to AYX? Oh, we're going to go to Yahoo Finance. Right over here. We'll go to Yahoo Finance together. And we'll type in AYX. Why don't we do something else? We'll do AYX. And we'll look at, we'll go to a chart and we'll confirm that we created the correct data. We'll look at the historical data. And we can look at August 18th, actually it's a little too far. Actually, we could just go scroll down to the very bottom. And we can look at August 2nd here, 2021. We see that we have 78, 79, 76, 35. Back into my application, 78, 79, 76, 35. How cool is that? And as simple as getting it done within 10 minutes on this call. Change it to TSLA. Here we go. Now we have our Tesla prices. So we know these numbers are much higher than Alteryx's, so we can confirm that. And you could go ahead and obviously, like I mentioned, you can change the range that you're pulling, right? So the concept here is not that we're able to build a calculator, you can pull this data. Nobody cares about this data on this call right now. The concept is that I now have an application that means it can open. So let's go into this a little further, okay? Number 1, I'm gonna go ahead and click save. I'm gonna actually make a note. And again, as you saw, I saved this file to my desktop. So just so you believe me, I'm going to my desktop and I'm going to replace the one already there. And I'm going to click yes. So if I am on my desktop, we're going to do that. Awesome. Let me go to my desktop down here. And I'm going to drag my API Yahoo Finance tool. So if you believe me, we're still using the same workflow. Now, what happens when I double click this file? Well, Alteryx is not going to open up. Rather, what's going to open up is an analytical application. So all I got to do as an Alteryx user and as a staff member, as my own staff member, again, I'm the manager and I want my staff to pull from, let's say, August 2nd to August 18th. They just have to utilize this tool. They have nothing else they need to do. They don't need to go into Alteryx Designer. They have nowhere else to be, just within this tool alone. So how cool is that? Let's say I am let's say I'm a construction manager, right? And I need my architect. Well, let's say I'm an architect manager and I have a very specific calculation that I want my staff to use in their architect process. Well, I don't have to worry about them and the formulas they're using in Alteryx, in Excel. Wouldn't it be awesome if I just provide them a calculator that they could just type in any number, and if they hit finish, the number that they're supposed to be using on their, let's say, drafts exports as such? Wouldn't that be amazing? So that's the purpose of using these analytical applications. And today, the way I learned actually how to use analytical applications was I attended the Inspire conference in Nashville, Tennessee, and I had never used macros before. or applications. And I had Alteryx SE sit with me for about 13 hours on one day of the conference and show me all the capabilities of the interface tools and applications. So I am extremely lucky that I had that opportunity to do that. So I'm going to show you a few more things. Number one is, how did I get this window to pop up? Okay, if you're familiar with Alteryx, you know that we're actually looking at a browse tool, right? So how this happened was, in my Alteryx designer, there's an option to work in the interface designer. So if I go to view and I click on interface designer, oftentimes it will pop up as such. So I'll make it floating, and it will oftentimes pop up as a window as like this, and it just kind of floats around. I like to dock it, so I'll dock it on the very right-hand side of my workflow. I also have a big screen, a big monitor, so it doesn't take up too much room. So we're going to do some playing around over here. So if I go into the configuration, the properties tab of my interface designer, upon success of my workflow running, I'm going to have the results tool show its results. What's the results tool? Well, if I go to the very end of my workflow and I click my browse tool and I go to my annotation tool palette, you'll see that I named this browse tool results. If I went ahead and deselected this and I went into my application to run it, and I selected my two dates, my start date and my end date, and I hit go, there are no output files to be seen. If I went ahead into my interface designer and I now clicked on the results window, again, if I go into my application, I'll click the 2nd and the 18th, and I hit finish, we'll actually see our results pop up, that results window. And as you see here, it's actually called results. If you have an output such as an Excel file, which I'm going to try to show you today, you'll actually get that Excel file output as well. You won't get a results window, you won't get a browse window, but you'll get the results in an Excel file. Okay, pretty cool. Last but not least, let's say I want the start date to come before the stock symbol and the end date to come before the stock symbol. Why? I don't really understand. You might not want that, but for demonstration purposes, you can select one of the elements inside your interface designer and use the arrow keys to bring them up or down. So maybe I want to bring my Alteryx stock symbol all the way down. So if I went ahead and clicked my wand, you'd see that now my application order is different. Some awesome other things. Let's go ahead and bring our stock symbol. We'll leave it down here, and I'm going to go into the tree view. So if I click on the tree view, I have my text box 47, my stock symbol, and I can just drag it up as such as well. So if I'm back into my layout, you see that now my stock symbol is up on top. Well, now I'd like to add some instructions. So I'm going to add a label. So I click on add and add label. My label is automatically brought down to the bottom, but I update this like another tool in Alteryx. So I'm just going to go to my label, and I'm going to say, please, I'm a New Yorker. We don't have to write please. Enter stock symbol below. And I'll go ahead and drag this up to the very top. Awesome. I might bring in another label, and I'll say, select start date of query. And I'll do another label and write select end date. And just drag that up. So the end date's going to go one up. And I'll click the select start date and drag that up once, twice, 3 times as a charm. Again, this can go up as many times as I want. This needs to go up one now. Okay, awesome. So if I went into my application now, you'd see that I have all of my instructions listed out. Okay, awesome. Now, what if I need the interface to be a little more simple? You know, maybe there's too many questions here. Well, I can go ahead and add some tabs. If I click on the questions button, this is actually a tab. So I can go ahead and rename the questions to stock symbol. Then, and this is for Janesh, who asked this question on the UI. So I'm sure you've seen this before, but I can go ahead and add another tab. And tab 56 is now going to be start date. So I'll go to my tree view, and I can actually now bring my select start date of query, my instructions down to the start date tab, and I can bring my start date date tool down to the start date tab. So if I'm now in my layout view, you see that I have my start date instructions and my start date in the start date tab. And if I click on the stock symbol tab, now I have AYX in my stock symbol tab, and I have the end date. So we'll go ahead and we'll select and create one more tab, and we're going to call this end date. and I'll go to my tree view. I want my end date tab to come after my start date tab, not before. And I'll go ahead and bring down my end date instructions to my end date tab and my end date date tool into my end date tab. Go ahead to my layout view. And once again, now I have an end date with my end date instruction and my end date date tool. So what does this ultimately mean for the user? I'm going to go ahead and click save quickly. If now they use the magic wand, this is what their application will look like. Enter AYX, enter its stock symbol, so TSLA. Click next, select the start date. Let's make it August 2nd. And you see here the process is much more laid out for the user. So if this is their first time using this tool, you can include all your instructions here. You don't have to provide a 30-page manual to your user of how to learn how to use this. Just you can do that for your auditors, but not for your users. You can just throw this pretty much at your users and make it very self-explanatory. They go ahead and click finish, and voila, pull up their results. Now I want to make this really pretty, okay? I want to include the tessellation logo over here. So back into my interface designer, in the properties window, I have the ability to use a graphic in my tool. Automatically by default, we're going to have an Alteryx graphic. You can go ahead and search on the community, or you can message me on LinkedIn, and I will provide to you the exact measurements of the image you need in order to make it fit perfectly within the analytical applications. It's not so simple. And so I have this tessellation app image that I've created in the past. So if I go ahead now and click on my wizard, you see that now my app looks even better. I have my tessellation logo, I can have my stock price, my start date, my end date, et cetera, et cetera. How awesome is that? Now, we're going to talk about one more thing. And like I said, I'd love to show you one more example of how this can be used. If we don't get to there, then I think we did a great job today so far covering up some of the basics of how you start building your analytical applications, as well as some of the automatic configurations some of the customizable configurations you can include in your applications as well. The last tab I want to show you is called the test view. So you've built this entire workflow. How do you know it's going to work? Like you just have to run it in the applications. That's a little annoying. What happens if your application fails for whatever reason? You don't know why it's failing, but it's failing. Let's take an example. Let's go ahead and we're going to we're gonna mess something up over here. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to change this update row from 1 to update number 3. Okay, our Unix state, right? So if I went ahead and now save this workflow, and I go ahead and run my application, and I go ahead and let's say type in Tesla again. I'm gonna click next. Start date's August 2nd, end date's August 3rd. There are no output files. Okay, that doesn't make sense to me. I'm pretty sure everything in my workflow is pretty good, right? Well, that's where you come into the test view. So what I'll do is I'll go into the test view pane within my interface designer, okay? And it's actually going to give me an example of what I can do with my tool. So I'm gonna type in again, TSLA. I'm gonna go to start date. I clicked August 2nd. My end date, I clicked August 3rd. Now, I can now click, instead of run, I can reset it. I'll show you what open, save, and view are, but I can just click open debug. When I click open debug, a debug workflow is going to open up on my canvas. All of my interface tools have been removed. Sorry that the containers sometimes shoot up before the tools themselves. So we'll just go ahead and make that change. If you believe me, however, I'm going to move these back and you'll see that there are no more interface tools here. But you will see that if you clicked on the link here, it's no longer AYX, it's actually TSLA. That's what I included in my test view. If I go to my box, I'd say, okay, I inputted August 2nd, that worked. My end date, I put in August 3rd. Why did I do August? That's why I was failing. I don't know why I'm talking. Oh yeah, we're in August. I just thought we were in September. Okay. August, okay, for my end date, I put in August 3rd. Okay, that did not work. August 3rd went over here, and I definitely don't want my Unix state to be updated. So I know right away that something in my configuration of my tools was incorrect. So I will go ahead and I will immediately close this. And I'll go back to my Yahoo Finance standard workflow calculator machine that I've been building with y'all. And I'm going to go ahead and change this back to 2. I'm going to go back to my test view. The actual configuration that I've selected has remained the same. I can open debug and run my workflow. And like I said, none of the interface tools are going to come in through the debug, just my generic tools that I have included on my workflow, but I can go ahead and see that. And my start date is August. Oh, that really didn't work for me. Let's try that one more time. I don't think I selected a start date or an end date. Just want to show you all. I mean, I'm sure the content was resonated, but I want to show you the actual results of it. So remember August 2nd, August 3rd, August 2nd, August 3rd. So I can actually review what my user's done. Pretty sweet. You can also just see, there's some HTML information here provided to you also. So, if you wanted this to come out as a, for you to review when you're building your applications, it's a pretty cool function. Okay, what about another thing? What happens when I'm building an analytical application and I keep on having to test my application? And it's quite annoying because I keep on having to going through all of my configurations that I've added. Every time I do this for someone, I have to go ahead and now update stock symbol, the price, start date, the end date, et cetera, et cetera. Lastly, what if I'm a user and I don't share this with my employees? I just use this workflow for myself. And I know that on Mondays, I have to run with this configuration. Well, it'd be quite annoying that on Tuesdays, I'm going to run a different configuration. On Wednesdays, I'm running a separate configuration. And every day of the week, oh my goodness, I can't remember what I'm supposed to be running. So what's awesome about the analytical applications is that if I went ahead and opened my application and I did, let's say on Mondays, I'm running TSLA, right? Let's say I own some TSLA and my manager requires me to report TSLA for, let's say, 1 week. So start date's going to be August 2nd, end date will be August 9th. Now, before I go ahead and run this, what I can actually do is I can click save. And what is it going to save? It's going to save an app value. So I'm going to go to my desktop and I'm going to save this app value as TSLA. We'll just say 8.2 to 8.9, right? August 2nd to August 9th. It's on my desktop. You see it's a YXWV and app value. Well, now I'll do the same thing for AYX. And instead of running it, I'm going to click save. I'm going to go to my desktop and you see I have my Tesla. So I'm just going to click this and replace TSLA with AYX. And again, we have an app value and I'll click save again. Now I'm going to exit this. Okay. I'm going to go to my desktop again. And I'm going to open up that application. Remember, I'm a user. I don't want to have to go into Alteryx every time I need to use this application. So I'm just going to open it on my desktop. Here it is. It just opened. Drag and drop. Here's our app. No Alteryx behind it. Pretty cool. And I'm going to click the open button. And I could go ahead and navigate to one of those YXWV files. So let's say I want to open Tesla for 8.2 to 8.9. Well, there you go. Now it's stock symbols Tesla. Start date's August 2nd. End date's August 9th. If I went ahead and did Alteryx, go ahead. Alteryx, start date, end date. So why is this awesome? Let's say again, let's say you're a manager and your staff is using your application and you want to know, did my staff enter the right configuration to their tool? We'll just have them, for audit purposes, actually save their configuration before they click run. This way you can throw that into an audit folder. So later on, when you say, okay, what did I do? What did I do on, let's say, August 2nd? Well, you don't remember what you did. You probably don't want to take notes on it, but it was that easy to maybe create a log folder of what you ran on that date. So if you want to say, okay, what did I do on August 1st? You just go into your file, open August 1st YXWV and see exactly what configuration you used. So really cool functionality of using analytical applications. Feel free to disagree. I'm going to go into my Alteryx one more time. Okay, and again here you can also do the same thing. You can open a YXWV file. So here's Tesla. Go ahead, you can save it. So if you want to save a new one, you can save a new YXWV, etc., etc. Okay. Excuse me, we don't need to talk about view. And then reset, we'll just reset your app the way you had initially configured it. Okay, so with that said, that's how we built our Yahoo Finance calculator today. Before I show you one more example, and I'd like to go in depth into it, but it's not built into the application yet. So we probably will skip that today. So I think maybe what we'll do is we'll close it here and we'll see if anyone has any questions before we call it quits for today's session. This is your time. I really love taking the questions. I can go into depth on anything while I'm here on applications. Let's see if anything comes in. Okay, while we're waiting, we'll just do a quick review. So number one, today what we did was we created a YXWZ file. We learned that if you go into the workflow configuration, you can actually go ahead and you can turn a standard app workflow into a YXWZ file in Analytic app. What we did is we learned how to access your YXWZ app. We learned that you can click that magic wand button, or you can open it from your desktop, right? The last thing we said was we went through customizing our YXWZ. So we can adjust the order of our configurations, we can adjust our tabs, we can add instructions, we can remove instructions, we can change titles, et cetera, et cetera. We can even affect the actual results coming out of our tool. Last but not least, this is something that I actually totally forgot to show you. If I had a file, let's say on my desktop, and I've had this before where I was like, okay, I need to edit this workflow, I can't open it. Every time I click on the file, what opens up, if you note here, my Alteryx Designer application opens up. And that's like annoying. Like I want to get this into Designer. So how do I get back into editing my applications? This is a quick trick that you most likely, if you're starting building analytical apps, will Google in the Alteryx community. So either you can go into Alteryx and let's say, let me exit everything. You can go into Alteryx, you can do I'm going to exit the application we just built. Let's actually go to start. I'm going to close all but this, right? We don't need to save this workflow. You can either just go to File, Open Recent, and go to your standard workflow, and it's going to open up your application. You can also go ahead and you can open a file browse tool, and you can drag and drop your application from your desktop. Let's say, here's my API Yahoo Finance. I can drag and drop it into my thing, and it will actually open up for me to adjust. And last but not least, if I want to edit a YXWZ file without going through, trying to figure out how to get there, you just right click on your file and you can click edit and open with, and you'll just want to open it with your designer or click edit. And that will also open it in Alteryx Designer. I have 2 Alteryx Designers installed, so I was nervous it was going to fail because I have a 2020 also installed, but it looks like 2021.3 has just installed, so we're pretty good. Back to our final points. Okay. We'll wait for Alteryx Designer to stop opening and we'll continue. So like I said, we created YXWZ. We learned how to access our YXWZ, which again, magic wand. We learned about the interface designer. We learned about how to customize our tools within an interface designer. And we've now shown you how to edit your actual file once it's already moved to production. Okay. So our last note. Here at Tessellation, we are an extremely friendly group. We actually just had a retreat of 38 of us meeting COVID friendly for the first time, because a lot of us have never met each other in person. We have a pretty remote firm. And we are an extremely friendly and excited crowd to get involved with anyone who's interested in Alteryx, Power BI, and Tableau, and all the other self-service tools that are available on the market. So we'd really like to hear from us. So you can please find anyone on LinkedIn, anyone on Twitter. If they're connected to Tessellation, do not hesitate to reach out to ask questions, tell us some of your data stories, share with us some of the ideas that you have. Keep the knowledge flowing. So here I put my email address and I put LinkedIn as well. I've put Phoebe so that you don't forget who I am. This is like just a point that you can just say, okay, Phoebe Buffet, Jacob Kahn. Phoebe is my favorite in all of Friends. I don't know if she'd be able to do the analytical applications they are all able to do, but I think her screen rendition over here is pretty good. So with that said, take a screenshot, reach out to us, like, subscribe, and share. I'm going to give it back to Katie. So thank you.
Thank you, Jacob, for such a great presentation, and thank you all that attended. You all will be getting some emails with the recording, and it'll be on Data Coach and Tessellation's websites. As always, thank you so much for attending, and don't be shy to reach out to anyone at Tessellation or Data Coach. All right. Bye, everyone. Thanks, Jacob.